Brother versus brother. It's one of the oldest stories there is. And for all the arguments comparing it against legitimate sports, nowhere else but in professional wrestling will you find such a timeless tale being played out in so many different and fascinating ways. Family feuds in wrestling can be compelling because of that fantastic mixture of real-life emotion and dramatic fictional narrative, the relatability of conflict between siblings or between a child and a parent. Fans are already emotionally invested in their favorite wrestlers when they fight the rest of the world, so when family gets involved, it can become much harder to look away. When it comes to bros fighting bros, one of the earliest examples that I could find came from ICW, the outlaw promotion out of Kentucky owned by Angelo Poffo and his two sons, Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage. For much of the promotion's history throughout the 70s and 80s, their top championship ping-ponged between Angelo's boys, as keeping it in the family helped ensure that the belt wouldn't fall into the hands of someone who might go rogue. Sadly, there isn't a lot of footage of them wrestling each other out there, but WWE does own the library now, so maybe they'll throw it up on the vault someday. And speaking of promoters' kids, consider Shane and Stephanie McMahon. Though the two never faced each other in a match, they saved that sort of business for their father. Their dynamic during the Attitude Era was a huge part of the success of that period. It's just too bad they couldn't carry that same mojo to the Invasion right afterward. The McMahon family drama of the last 4 years or so might have had people making comparisons to the TV show Succession, but for the last 2 decades, I think the invisible battle for power between brother and sister was far more interesting. For as long as I can remember, there were camps online in support of either Shane or Stephanie eventually running the company, and for at least a little bit, it seemed like both options were on the table. Shane did have a lot of supporters, and it's easy to see why. The firstborn son had a lot of ideas that were shot down by his father, while the second-born daughter became the head of creative, and therefore responsible for a lot of god-awful programming. I do think that Shane having more fans at least partly boiled down to his on-air persona being generally more likable than that of his sisters, which I don't think is fair, but for the most part, fans just wanted a change up top. Then Shane became best in the world, did Raw Underground, booked himself to look really strong in the Royal Rumble, then tore his quad seconds into his surprise return at Mania 39. So, never mind, I guess. But here's an idea for you. What if we just kept the McMahon family bloodline out of creative and wrestling entirely for the next 100 years or so? Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Thankfully, no other sibling rivalry in wrestling over the decades has been nearly as messy or complicated as that of the McMahon children, but all still have some degree of infamy. This week, I'm looking at some of the biggest examples of brotherly hatred across multiple promotions, both the good and the bad, real Cain and Abel type shit. And by the end of this video, you'll learn why some of these stories belong amongst the greatest in wrestling history, and why some are Carlito and Primo. But first, if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe to Wrestling with Regret so you can get more videos like this. We begin with the quintessential example of sibling rivalry, the WWF's first crack at the brother versus brother archetype, Bret and Owen Hart. If you watched my recent video on betrayals, then you know we've touched on this before. The slow burn from Survivor Series 93 that turned into Owen kicking Bret's leg and admitting years of hidden resentment at the Royal Rumble 2 months later. After his actions, there were few individuals in the Federation who were hated more than the Young Rocket. The two had an all-time classic to kick off WrestleMania 10, arguably the greatest opening match in the history of the event. Owen began the night by pulling off the shocking upset against Big Brother, only to end the evening watching bitterly from the stage as Bret regained the WWF Championship later in the night against Yokozuna. Now the natural #1 contender to Bret's title, Owen upped the ante by winning that year's King of the Ring tournament, with a little help from Bret's former partner in Jim Neidhart. The feud peaked at SummerSlam 94 when the King of Hearts and the Hitman faced off for the title in an epic steel cage match. Widely considered one of the best in company history, it ended with Bret narrowly winning to hold on to his gold before the ring would be rushed by other members of the Hart family. After SummerSlam, things had cooled down, especially now that the new heel Bob Backlund was thrown into the mix as a proxy of sorts for Owen. At Survivor Series, Bob battled Bret in a really boring submission match for the title. 9.5 minutes, y'all! Owen got a measure of revenge on his brother by convincing their mother Helen to throw in the towel to save her son, a tearful ruse that cost Bret his championship. And that was pretty much how the Bret and Owen feud ended. Considering the Hitman fought Mr. Backlund again at Mania 11, and Owen moved on to team with Yokozuna to win the tag titles at that same show, the opportunities and the interest no longer seemed to be there. The brothers reunited in 1997 when Bret put together the new and improved Hart Foundation. But even though their feud ended somewhat flat, the first two-thirds of the angle continued to stand the test of time as one of the crown jewels of brother-on-brother violence. Now, while all that was going on, up in the northeast corner of the country, there was a small upstart promotion that was looking at what the WWF was doing and said, "Do you know what a fight between brothers needs? Blood. Lots and lots of blood." Ian and Axel Rotten. Together as the Bad Breed, the pair were one of the tag team staples of the early days of Paul Heyman's ECW. But after going down in a losing team splits match against the Pitbulls in January of 1995, one brother did not take it very well.
Ian Rotten just closed on his brother Axel. Where did that come from?
Following Ian's betrayal, the two went on to set a new standard of violence for the rest of the year in ECW. Ian and Axel traded wins in almost every kind of match imaginable, from one involving a barbed wire baseball bat to hair versus hair matches to taped fist matches. But they saved the best for last and took violence to the next level when they brutalized each other in a tie-pay death match at Hardcore Heaven. Broken glass stuck to taped fists that saw Axel put Ian down for good, a war that was memorable enough to win the fan vote for Feud of the Year in that year's Pro Wrestling Illustrated. The Bad Breed's brief but epic symphony of violence set the bar for brutality in wrestling that is still being mimicked today. And hey, speaking of things that are mimicked, have I ever told you about the influence of superstar Billy Graham?
You see, when Big Papa Pump comes to town, all my hooches come around.
At Super Brawl 8, Scott Steiner did the single greatest thing for his career and turned on his older brother Rick, severing a decade-long professional partnership. Joining the NWO just after the group hit its peak, the younger Steiner was getting a bit too big for his britches, figuratively and literally, and it was time for a change that bookers had been wanting since 1992. Initially nicknamed White Thunder and then Superstar, which was a bit too on the nose, Scotty finally settled on the legendary moniker of Big Papa Pump, and wrestling was never the same again. He became one of the era's defining characters, earned a long-deserved world title reign at the end of WCW's existence, and has since become immortalized thanks to his outlandish promos over the years. And if it feels like I'm taking too long to get to a point, imagine how we felt when they were dragging this storyline along. For months after the breakup, Scott and his new buddy Buff Bagwell did everything they could to avoid conflict with the dog-faced gremlin. Fake injuries, have Chucky the Killer doll run cover, simply run away, you name it. Every delay got more and more drawn out and aggravating. But finally at Halloween Havoc, Rick got his hands on his no-good brother after having to beat him and the Giant to win the WCW tag titles by himself right before. Despite being jumped by Bagwell twice and getting hit in the balls 4 times across 2 matches, Rick ultimately survived and got the Duke over his brother. I think I'd rather take my chances going one-on-one with Chucky than having to sit through all that again. One of the Steiners' best rivals in WCW was another pair of brothers named Booker T and Stevie Ray, the record-setting tag team known as Harlem Heat. They were great together, but by 1998 it was becoming clear that Booker T was destined for greater things. The breakup of Harlem Heat had been a slow burn. In the summer of '98, when Booker was injured, Stevie briefly defended the TV title in his stead before losing it to Chris Jericho. A few weeks later, when Booker was apparently on the mend, he was attacked backstage, and while the insinuation was that Stevie was behind it, it was never made clear. Then he joined the NWO Black and White, so that sort of helped fans make up their minds. After more than a year, the two reunited to claim the tag title record by beating the Jersey Triad at Road Wild. Over the rest of the year, the Heat feuded with teams like the Triad, the West Texas Rednecks, and the Revolution. They even added the mysterious Midnight to the group to counteract the presence of Asia, the group's China ripoff. But Stevie resented Midnight's presence in the group almost immediately, so he challenged her to a match and lost. After the shocking turn of events, Stevie had enough and turned on both her and Booker. He would soon recruit Big T, a bigger dude named Cassius, and even the former Clarence Mason to form Harlem Heat 2000. Because as we all know, adding 2000 to something always makes it better. Just ask the NWO, the LOD, or the Techno Team. During this feud, Booker lost the use of his iconic theme song, the trademark pyro, and even the use of the letter T. Guess it was as good a reason as any to turn into G.I. Bro. But the former Ahmed Johnson flamed out as Big T, and this new version of Harlem Heat went nowhere fast. Booker got his T back, and he and Stevie reached a point of reconciliation before the older brother eventually transitioned into a color commentary role. Booker's breakup with his brother was clunky and involved way too many outside participants, but at least his reward for putting up with all that nonsense was becoming world champion. Man, I've got to be honest with you. At this point in the video, I'm kind of getting bored. Like, ooh, decades of resentment and jealousy bubbling up to the surface, resulting in a pithy little match here and there. Ooh, that's child's play. Give me mysticism. Give me attempted murder, damn it!
Oh no! What's he doing? Ah! Oh! The casket's on fire!
For my money, one of the greatest sibling wars of all time has to go to the Undertaker and Kane, a pair of monsters who at first possessed so many similarities that for a brief moment, my mark-ass kid self thought they may have actually been brothers. But even though they weren't, it didn't matter because the Ride fans were taking on more than made up for it. For months, The Undertaker's former manager Paul Bearer claimed that Taker had a secret younger brother, supposedly killed in a fire during childhood but survived, a fire that was allegedly started by the dead man himself. The WWF was taking a big risk in messing with Taker lore so flagrantly, creating a whole new character from nothing just to fight him. Then again, this is the same guy who'd fought Giant Gonzalez, a well past his prime King Kong Bundy, and even a bad clone of himself, and he had survived all that, so what's the worst that could happen? The big payoff came at Bad Blood 97, and after the iconic debut of the Big Red Machine during the first ever Hell in a Cell match, it was off to the races. 1998 alone went crazy. We had caskets set on fire, we had lightning, we had choke slams into the caskets of their parents, we had druids, 3 tombstones at WrestleMania, the Inferno match, Taker helping Kane win the title, being in cahoots, not being in cahoots, then finally Mean Mark and Paul Pringle reuniting at Kane's expense, forming the Ministry of Darkness. And that was just year 1. Over the nearly 2 decades after that, the Brothers of Destruction joined forces and waged war with each other, only to join up again so often it almost became a parody. Yet each time they'd break up or get back together, no matter how randomly or lazily, the audience almost always ate it up. But when they did fight, it was a comically one-sided feud, as I am hard-pressed to come up with more than 1 or 2 examples where Kane was able to straight up beat his older brother in a match. Kind of annoying if you were a fan of the Big Red Monster, or could relate to being a younger sibling like myself. Nevertheless, for its combination of lore, dramatic beats, and special effects that I thought were pretty cool for the time, not to mention its sheer longevity, the war between Kane and The Undertaker, especially that first year and all the build leading up to it, will go down as one of WWE's crowning creative achievements. The on and off feud between these two is an example of a good idea that went on for way too long, but we all know that this is an outlier. For the most part, wrestling is full of sibling rivalry stories that were barely followed up on. For instance, it's been mentioned here a couple of times before on this channel, but it always shocks me to think how little WWE did with Edge and Christian as rivals. Aside from a pair of matches over the Intercontinental title and a cage match at a UK pay-per-view, this was a feud they never really explored after 2001. Considering that fans could see the breakup coming for at least twice the length of time their actual feud lasted, it really felt like a missed opportunity. They never even tried to revisit it when Christian came back in 2009. Another feud that I selfishly wish we got to see more of in WWE was between Eddie and Chavo Guerrero. Though they were actually uncle and nephew, the mere 3-year age gap between them had them growing up more like brothers than anything else. Their feud in WCW was one of the more interesting undercard angles of 1998. Eddie would show Chavo tough love by putting him in unwinnable situations, finally leading to Chavo going insane and cutting his own hair after losing a hair match to Eddie at Bash at the Beach. Chavito had long mellowed out by the time they were teaming together in WWE, and the two even won the tag titles on SmackDown. But by the end of 2003, he had gotten tired of Eddie dropping the ball, so he put an end to the union after they failed to regain the belts from the Bashams. Hey man, I agree. If you can't beat those guys, fuck it, split up. Much like with the last ENC I talked about, Eddie and Chavo's actual feud lasted for about a third of the time from when the seeds of division were first sown. It could have been cool to see them have an extended run of matches, with both men having evolved so much from the last time they feuded. They even brought in Chavo's father and Eddie's older brother, Chavo Sr., to help add some heat to the angle. Heck, it worked for Randy Orton and Cowboy Bob. However, the feud ended almost before it began, when Eddie resoundingly beat Chavo at the 04 Rumble only a few weeks after the official split. The next thing you know, I want to believe that this Eddie and Chavo program might have gone on a bit longer had WWE not responded to Latino Heat's surging popularity and strapping the rocket to him going into WrestleMania 20. But I get it, he had to win here decisively, had to look strong before beating Brock Lesnar in the biggest match of his career a month later. So while I'm happy that fate intervened and Eddie got to have his time on top, had that never happened, I wouldn't have been against an extended program with Chavito. One of WWE's biggest missed boats when it came to bro versus bro combat was the Rhodes Brothers, Dustin and Cody. From the day Cody stepped foot on the main roster, many fans fantasized of a potential dream match with the sons of the American Dream on a grand stage. But what folks got instead was Goldust versus a recently healed Stardust at Fastlane 2015, their only televised one-on-one match. I've already talked about this match in my individual videos about the Rhodes boys, so I won't go into too much more detail here. It wasn't a god-awful match, it just fell well below people's expectations. Good thing they had another crack at it 4 years later.
The crowd is so respectful. They're on their feet. This is what you live for if you're a wrestling fan.
At AEW's inaugural event of Double or Nothing 2019, Cody challenged his older brother to one more match, citing his desire to kill the past once and for all. In what was seemingly being treated as Dustin's final stand, the two waged an all-out war in Las Vegas, with the elder Rhodes bleeding buckets all over the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Easily one of the top matches, if not the match of the year, Cody and Dustin got to right some wrongs and put on one of the best and emotional matches in AEW history. Then Cody was like, "You want to be my tag partner next month?" And Dustin was like, "Sure." And for a while, that was the most recent time a pair of brothers had fought on such a big stage. Until a certain pair of super-kicking siblings were torn apart over jealousy, greed, and ego.
I just hope I don't have to kill him. I'm gonna beat his ass.
You were expecting somebody else? There's not much to be said about the 2011 feud between Max and Jeremy Buck back in TNA. One day they decided to split up Generation Me and have them fight, then without much notice or explanation, they were put back together a month later. Add that to the lol TNA list, I guess. Fast forward nearly a decade later to June of 2020. The pandemic is here, lockdowns are in full effect, and more people are cutting their promos from home than usual. During that time, Nick Jackson of the Young Bucks was written off of AEW TV with a kayfabe injury, and in preparation for his return, he and Big Brother Matt set up a big tongue-in-cheek angle on their Being the Elite web series. It all led to a rare Matt vs. Nick match on the Jackson family compound for episode 200, a callback to their backyard days of yore, an absurd spectacle filled with super kicks, a golf cart, a destroyer into a swimming pool, and a slew of cheeky references that left the fourth wall in a pile of rubble.
I don't think he's coming after my back. I'm gonna focus on his back.
Look up. Are you freaking kidding me? Now that's a house show dive.
God, I can't believe you did 5 of those Northern Lights.
To date, the Jackson brothers have not faced off against each other in an actual AEW match, but this ludicrous encounter is emblematic of the length some in wrestling went to at the time to keep themselves sane and the fans happy. But if you want more serious fare in the pandemic era bros fighting on family property category, might I suggest Jay and Mark Briscoe's Fight on the Farm in 2021.
Tell me something, boy. Tell me something, boy. You messing with him, son? Huh? You know I'm crazy. You asshole. Yeah. You good yet? We're good.
Okay, anyway, moving on to the other super kicking tandem that fought each other in the Usos. Man, talk about a wasted opportunity. As cool as the first half of the Bloodline story was, a lot of what took place after War Games felt confused. It was Jimmy who first betrayed Roman Reigns, and he had no problem fighting alongside his brother against Roman and Solo Sikoa at Money in the Bank 2023. But just weeks later at SummerSlam, it was Jimmy who went back to the Bloodline after betraying his own brother Jay. But not out of jealousy, but fear that if Jay won the championship and became the tribal chief, he would become corrupt with power or something. Guys, it's a championship belt, not the One Ring. After months of Jimmy constantly costing his twin brother matches, at last a bout was set for WrestleMania 40. Months of dramatic build, months of emotional storytelling, all down the drain in a slow, boring, kickerific match that exposed just how badly these two needed each other as tag partners. Jay's singles push continued unabated for the next year plus, while Jimmy just kind of hung around, but neither brother's been able to wash the stain of that one-on-one match away. Now that the Usos are back together, let's hope they never try and break them up again. But if they do, could one of the Usos go crazy, maybe, and put a white streak in their hair and speak in a funny accent? Because now that I think about it, that has worked in the past. Before we wrap this video up, we have to talk about the on-again, off-again feud between some of modern wrestling's most influential siblings, the Hardy Boys. WWE tried to put the two against each other as far back as 2001, just as the Invasion angle was wrapping up. Matt had gotten tired of Jeff's screw-ups and forced Lita to pick a side. But when it came time for their big emotional pay-per-view matchup, the fans were dead quiet because nobody wanted to see the brothers fight. It was clear there was still a lot of meat left on that babyface bone as Team Extreme reunited about a month later and abandoned the previous storyline. But nearly a decade later, after both Matt and Jeff went through their own peaks and valleys and temporary breaks from WWE, they tried it again in 2009. By this point, Jeff had overcome all sorts of personal struggles and behind-the-scenes issues to become WWE champion. Then at that year's Royal Rumble, Matt betrayed his younger brother to help Edge regain the title. Wow, what growth from Matt since 2005! Matt then suggested that it might have been he who was behind all the real-life tragedies that had befallen Jeff, including the house fire that cost Jeff his beloved Jack Russell Terrier. Which, good lord, has there been any other wrestler involved in more storylines based on the worst parts of their own life experiences than Jeff Hardy? Talk about a vicious fucking cycle! Naturally, WWE walked back the whole arson thing by the time of Matt and Jeff's Extreme Rules match at WrestleMania 25 and their stretcher match on SmackDown that same week, both of which were won by the elder brother. 3 weeks later at Backlash, the two faced off in an awesome I Quit match, with Jeff emerging the victor and putting an end to their feud for the time being. Unlike in 2001, this feud not only delivered on the action, but by now the boys had more distinct personalities that the fans were better invested in. In 2016, both Hardys were in TNA, and things were being set up for them to feud with each other one more time. But this time around, things went in a different direction than anyone could have anticipated. Soon after Matt lost the TNA title earlier that year, the Hardys were back at it again. An I Quit match that April ended inconclusively as both men were taken out on a stretcher. But a month later, Matt re-emerged and revealed that he had been broken. With a weird new hairstyle and an even weirder accent, this strange new Hardy claimed to be an ancient spirit locked in Matt's physical vessel, now obsessed with deleting Jeff, whom he referred to henceforth as Brother Nero. Now, on the surface, this character sounds like the incoherent ramblings of a teenage backyarder who just shotgunned an energy drink. Still, it was the coolest damn thing we saw all year.
Brother Nero, I knew you'd come.
Their war eventually led to the final deletion, a sprawling, epic battle across the Hardy family compound that not only inspired the aforementioned Young Bucks fight, but damn near every cinematic match we've seen in wrestling since. Easily the viral wrestling hit of 2016, we saw drones, fireworks, a lake of reincarnation, a dilapidated boat, and yes, a little bit of wrestling sprinkled in as well. In the end, Broken Matt finally bested Brother Nero and rendered him obsolete. But despite being stripped of his identity, it wasn't long before Jeff made up with Matt once again, and from here the Broken Universe truly went wild. The final deletion begat multiple sequels and an expedition of gold as the Hardys once again became wrestling's most popular act on their way to re-signing with WWE, then later to AEW, and even those companies tried putting their own spin on it. If success in wrestling is defined by drawing power, then Matt and Jeff's Broken War from a decade ago should be considered one of the greatest sibling rivalries in history. Well, that's going to do it for me this week, gang. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something. And if you're out there and you're like me and you've got a sibling or two in your life, I hope you can relate to this message that siblings are a blessing, and it's much better to have them in our lives as teammates instead of rivals. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time. Aw, shit! I forgot about the Bellas!
I wish you died in the womb!
Holy crap, I can't believe I almost finished this video without talking about not only one of the worst sibling feuds ever, but one of the most obnoxious, time-consuming, and uninteresting things WWE has ever done. And for the mid-2010s, that's saying something. We take you back to the spring of 2014, soon after the high of WrestleMania 30. Despite the feel-good ending of Daniel Bryan winning the world title in the main event, he and his real-life wife, Brie Bella, remained in the kayfabe crosshairs of a vindictive authority. D-Bry had to feud with Kane of all people, then was eventually forced to relinquish his gold due to injury or face termination. But to help delay the inevitable, Brie quit the company on her own and stuck it to Stephanie McMahon on the way out. Stephanie took her anger out on Brie's sister Nikki, putting her in multiple handicap matches as punishment. One thing led to another, and we found our principal players at that year's SummerSlam, when Brie returned to face Evil Steph in a one-on-one match. Out of nowhere, Nikki showed up to betray her slightly younger sister, leading to this hilarious shot of her and Triple H. For the next several weeks, Nikki launched a massive character assassination campaign toward her twin, alleging that Brie was a horrible and manipulative sister. She told Brie that she wished she died in the womb. She even ran a series of vignettes talking about all the times she had to suffer for Brie's selfish behavior.
Sadly, that's the only photo that exists of us. Right after that photo was taken, Ryan disappeared.
Oh my God! Brie killed him?
I found him later on that night, in the parking lot, with Brie.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, that's still bad, but, wow. I don't know why my mind went there. That was weird. Ugh. Things got so heated, not even Jerry Springer, the king of trashy televised confrontation, could make things work out.
No, Jerry Springer! Somebody do something! The former mayor of Cincinnati! That was JJ! Who cares?
Well, thanks for trying to keep things entertaining, JBL. It cannot be overstated how agonizing these live segments were. We make fun of some moments today feeling overly drawn out. Well, these Bella Twins promos were clearly the blueprint, because a 5-minute segment with them always managed to feel like 10. I didn't have a problem with the nuts and bolts of the story, it's just the acting between them stunk and the writing was worse. It never felt genuine, like they themselves didn't believe what they were saying to each other. Not as if the men were much better actors during this time, but few if any of them were dealing with this kind of trashy soap opera material. After 2 months of this, the two finally had their one-on-one match at Hell in a Cell, where the loser had to be the winner's personal assistant for 30 days. Nikki won the contest, and from then it was on. She did all sorts of heinous things like pour a milkshake on Brie and have her help her win matches. Oh, the humiliation. The servant clause was set to expire the day after Survivor Series, the day after Nikki was going to challenge for the Divas Championship. On the night of the pay-per-view, Nikki's match with AJ Lee was cut from 15 minutes down to 30 seconds on a moment's notice, so they came up with a reprise of the Daniel Bryan-Sheamus match from WrestleMania, now with 100% less dude.
What on earth? Whoa, Nikki!
you imagine if that was a ploy used by any other characters with a master-servant dynamic? Could you picture Ted DiBiase going, "Virgil, kiss that guy on the lips for me"? According to the Bellas, the original plan was for Brie to get her revenge the next night on Raw, beating Nikki for the belt on her way to freedom. But for whatever reason, WWE simply decided to kill the storyline at the pay-per-view and have the twins back on the same page again like nothing had happened. That was the conclusion to months of overwrought drama? Whatever happened to Nikki having no sister? Whatever happened to her wanting Brie to die in the womb? Plenty of sibling feuds have come and gone, and certainly none of them have been perfect, but the Bellas' breakup and confusing reconciliation was just plain bad. Some of it was on the performers being given material they weren't equipped for, but nobody should get the blame more than the creative genius who greenlit the booking. Whatever it took to get more eyes on Total Divas, I suppose.
Who cares?
Did I miss any other big sibling rivalries on here, Regretters? Let me know and tell me what you thought of this video in the comment section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, hit that bell icon to get all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time. Mother